Um, Hello and welcome to Phoenix Vision. I am here with my good buddy Tommy Harevis, who is a phenomenal musician, regression therapist, and has spent many a year working with and studying the Mayan lineage, facilitating their journeys around the world. And Tommy's also a Scorpio, so no better person to be discussing this archetype with this evening. We've both got the Sun and Mercury in Scorpio, I believe, so we could expect a deep, intense, and transformative dive. So really, thank you for coming on tonight, mate. Yeah, welcome.
Hello, Jess. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so mate, I'd love to kick off by just hearing a little bit more about you, really. And I heard about some of your life aspects earlier this year, and would love if you could share a little bit about your journey, please, into being a musician and doing the kind of work that you're doing, as well as studying with the Mayans, because you've got an amazing project that you've been working on recently that we were just talking about. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, mate.
Thank you. Yes, well, the journey, where it starts. Some say that the journey never really starts and never finishes, that we are constantly traveling through the infinite space. And my own journey started in this life, in this place, already in the belly of my mother. And I'm very grateful to my parents and the teachers around because, Scorpio has to do a lot with knowing the knowledge and wanting to know a bit more. So, what I can recall is that my intention to be born here in this life was to be born around knowledge, information, teachers. And I had this opportunity to be born in a family that was already practicing spirituality, meditation, psychotronics, and regression therapy. So I was born next to the teacher of regression, and that's how it really started because the first meditations and practices were done in my mother's womb. So I could hear the voice of my teacher guiding my mother and myself inside. So, because of that, I was born in the environment of people studying different cultures, traditions, practices all over the world and bringing those aspects of meditation, meditative state of mind into daily life. So I had a good example of my parents and teachers around me. And very early on, I was very much interested in all the archetypes. My first books that when I couldn't read yet, but I seen the pictures and it attracted me a lot were the books about the pyramids. So Egypt, ancient Maya people, ancient Aztec people, ancient Inca people. So wherever I could see pyramids was always something familiar to me. And then somehow through the process of life early on, because being in the environment of therapies and regression work, I started to, practice this and study it very early. And I was probably the youngest in history licensed therapist in regression work. In the age of 18, I went through all the tests and verifications and seminars under guidance of parents and teacher. So I was very young therapist already. Some people would come around and I would just bring them to their past traumas, shocks, and sometimes past lives, prenatal state, and all these things to release and let go of suffering and traumas and difficulties that people may have in their mind. So that was a quick start in this life with this. And I remember going to astrologist when I was about 13, 14 years old. My mother brought me to old grandmother astrologist, let's say old witch, and she looked at my chart. She analyzed it and she said, well, you need to be doing in this life something that is on the edge of life and death. Then I said, okay, what type of work you recommend? Maybe the lifeguard, life savior, person working on cemetery, something that has to do with dead bodies and saving lives. I said, well, I would like to be a musician. And she said, okay, then you need to play music of the spheres, music that will touch both the living ones and the ones who passed away. You need to create music that will connect those two worlds. I said, okay, I want to do regression. Great. This has to do with your astrology. You can do that. You will be walking on the edge of life and death, and that's predestined to you, she said. So yes, I choose that path of both therapy and music to bring those things together. And then at some point I met the elders from Guatemala. Before the so-called end of the world, we invited the elders to Europe to talk about it. So the Maya people came to Europe to talk about the coming end of the world as it was announced by medias. And of course, they said there is no end of the world coming. And beloved teacher, His Holy Memory, Tata Pedro Cruz, was speaking at the stage and sharing about his cosmovision and nawales and archetypes. And then in the end, he said, don't believe in it, just test it, put it to the test and try if it works for you. And that moment, I started to check those things. And from this day, from that day until today, I was checking the energies and I kept counting them, and I asked him to be my teacher. So that's how it started, and then the journeys to Guatemala, to the jungle, pyramids. It all started like that, with meeting person who carries the tradition, the knowledge, and doing my best to be able to learn the language and to live with them, to travel with them, and study it a bit more. So it was combining the modern ways of expressing the Scorpio through the therapy and music with some ancient memory. As going back to those places, it feels like really literally going back and activating the memory that, yes, I do consider reincarnation being a fact and working with it practically, that we can recall and remember some things from the past. And I imagine that this start of life around those teachers, my parents, helped me to remember a little bit more and keep the memory going. So it combines well both the Scorpio and the Noch Nawal, in my case, in the Mayan calendar. So that was the first type of journey with learning. But then also I decided to go through my own transformative process, leaving the school at some point in the age of 18 to after becoming a therapist. I decided to hitchhike through 13 countries. So I had one flute with me, and I was learning how to play that flute during the journey, playing on streets, traveling without money, and earning just to eat, sleeping everywhere I could, and then moving forward from one country to another with an idea that from each country that I visit, I want to have a traditional flute of that tradition of that country. So I took my time in each place to play and find ways, many strange ways to get into traditional instruments. And then moving forward, I came back with a backpack with more than 20 different flutes. So that was my lonely hitchhiking journey that gave me a lot of experience, a lot of transformation to move during that time of high energy, of a lot of strength inside, being a lonely man in a way, playing in all those countries and cultures. It was very important to be a bit more mature and find some responsibility in that process. So yes, that was my journey, my first journey that I took around those countries. And then I kept on traveling until today, touching different places, countries, and being very excited about especially the mythology and symbols and archetypes of each place that I visit.
Oh, fantastic, mate. Fantastic. I think just about everything you just shared there, I'd love to just open up on more. And yeah, just touch on flutes. I've got I've seen your flute, a picture of your flute collection, and yeah, there's one or two.
Mhm.
And yeah, just wanted to share. Well, like one of my very good friends attended your flute workshop in Poland, and yeah, he just his reports of it were utterly transformational, and he had such a beautiful time with that medicine that you carry. And I really cherish time spent with yourself and Nina, because it's just first, like just your warm energy and just willingness to share and willingness to teach is just like I just, you know, it's just really beautiful. And then just the knowledge and conversations that we have and that you have to share is just, yeah, I really look forward to it. So yeah, this is a real treat to have you on tonight. And yeah, I mean, like, yeah, love to expand more. Maybe another time on the Mayan tradition, because I know that you're putting together a huge body of work at the moment, and yeah, maybe if you're up for it, we could talk about that another time. But would you be able to just touch on that body of work so that anyone that's listening knows maybe what's going to come down the pipeline?
Yes, right now I'm sitting down to put together a book that brings about 11 years of experiencing the Mayan calendar in practice. So, the Mayan calendar and Mayan cosmology or Mayan cosmovision is a vast topic, and I already wrote in the past about the qualities of the energies of the days. So, each day carries a different energy, each sun brings a different quality. And I wrote one book about how to tune and how to meditate with opportunities of each day. And now I'm putting together a book of self exploration, of self understanding according to the energy of the day when we were born. So, the archetype, the Nagual, the guardian that brought us to life by blessing us with the energy of the moment when we were born, and what are our gifts, challenges, where we come from, where we're going to. So this book is for self-exploration and to be able to understand more characters of people, their tendencies, compatibilities, both for family relationships and companies, and how we interact with each other's unconsciously, playing the big game of archetypes. I'm looking forward to publish it soon. It's a lot of work, but it's very tasty. It should be very tasty, especially for those who like celebrities and public figures, because I'm putting their informations, my personal analysis of the Nawales, the signs of people such as, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, Donald Trump, and so political figures and, you know, actors and different artists, to understand a bit better how those energies can be expressed in, you know, the public world.
Amazing, yeah, that will be really juicy because I've actually recently with the course that I'm putting together, I've been doing chart readings from every sign, and I actually did a chart reading for Arnold Schwarzenegger and Donald Trump for
Mm.
first house with Arnold and Gemini for Donald Trump, and be really interesting to cross reference them because Arnold's chart especially, you can just see it all. It's just like the Sun, Pluto, Saturn, stellium in the first house in Leo, the larger than life, linking
Mm.
Moon to Capricorn, sixth house, giving the discipline. Because I remember I was watching his documentary, and at one point he goes, and you know, some days you get depressed and you know think, why am I doing this? And then those days I would just switch my emotions off. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, what kind of placement can just do that? It's like, okay, Capricorn, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I'd be really interested to look into that. And yeah, that concept for me was really like really wow, because emotions and the ability to switch your emotions off. I think some people may have the capacity for that, and other people will really struggle with that. And I think um, being Scorpio, that might not be such a thing that one can do, and neither do I think is it always appropriate. And well, but actually, no, not a lot of the times it's appropriate, because we can often then get the challenges that come from the suppression of the emotion, rather than
Mm.
going to the depths and feeling the emotion, which is correlated with Scorpio. We're talking about, if we're looking at the three water signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, we can maybe look at this as Cancer being the shallows, close to the shore or the rivers and lakes. Pisces perhaps being the ocean, where Scorpio maybe being the Mariana Trench,
Mm.
the bottom of the ocean where all the freaky fish are hanging out. So yeah, like I guess like just love to open up on the Scorpio archetype, and since we're kind of like open on the theme of emotionality, like would you care to share what the essence is, or what you see of the essence of Scorpio being, as well as the correlation with the emotions?
Hmm. Yeah, Scorpio. I like to think of Scorpio also being represented in the sky with some other traditions when they observe the positions of sun through those constellations. Some consider it a snake serpent sign. So Scorpio having the quality just like the feathered serpent in some traditions, the snake belonging to the earth, the underground, and then those feathers, the bird, the eagle, belongs to the sky. So us Scorpio people being, half aliens and half animals, having that emotional capacity to experience all the whole range of emotions. So from the anger, hatred, and most difficult feelings and emotions, all the way to these ecstatic, blissful feelings. So yes, the Scorpio itself is a very complicated sign. We can say it's a double sign in a way. That's why both the serpent and the eagle. It's very complicated person to be with in the first place. They say sometimes that Scorpio is the most challenging partner that you can get because of that intensity. And that intensity is expressed in relationships, in relation to all people, and relationship with oneself a lot. So those strong emotions, sometimes we think about emotions as something that is active and dynamic in the setting of interactions with people. And Scorpio especially also has strong feelings towards oneself. So the feeling of guilt, anger towards oneself, strong self-judgments, and also self love in this type of expression that we can sometimes adore ourselves and be super happy. One day we are very happy about ourselves, another day we are very not happy about ourselves. So just like they say that the snake that needs to hide in the ground, on in the other day it's outside there. So we feel that one day we are ugly and other day we are so beautiful. So it's often with Scorpios, they have these two ways of expressing themselves, or the way they perceive how they look like. Sometimes we are the most beautiful being on the earth, sometimes we want to just hide. And Scorpios, because of that, they need to put a lot of attention to their social interactions, to respect when they really want to just be with themselves and go into their cave, and when they want to shine, because the moment of shining for Scorpio is very powerful. They can be really, really, you know, very bright out there for other people, sharing a lot and sharing their beauty and intensity. And this intensity sometimes is very welcome, and sometimes it can be just too much. So Scorpio needs to know when to act and when to be passive a lot, and that's what's often represented in the way the Scorpio lives. So Scorpio people, they like to have this dark space or cave or their own personal territory where they can just go down deep into the cave of their mind, their interests, their activities. Sometimes the darkness that other signs will not stand, will not survive, for Scorpio is just the best place to be. And sometimes it can make them depressive, so they need to know when to go out of the cave, go out from the underground, and be out there in the world. So it's a very extreme sign, very intense. And if people like intensity in all the spectrum, then they love Scorpio people. And this is something very attractive because they can go deep. Those are very deep signs. And wherever we have the Scorpio in our chart, it's often the depth, the space of depth, where we go a little bit deeper. Sometimes we cross the border, because that's what Scorpio like to test, to see what's the next horizon, how far we can go. And that always has to do both with people outside, with their challenges that they're facing, and themselves. So it's a very self-critical sign. We really put through strong filters our own life, what we do, our own actions, and also we tend to criticize and be suspicious to others, because the sight of Scorpio is very deep, it's very penetrating. Often we see things that other people would not realize. We can go pretty strong and far, and we need to know how to manage and handle that, because our words, when we address what we see in others, can be both constructive and very motivating, and can be also destructive and can harm people, can cause harm. So the same thing we do about ourselves. We can see that we are very talented, we can really achieve a lot with the power that we have inside, but the other day we look there and we see just, madness and a lot of mess inside that sometimes overwhelms us. So this sign has a lot to do with our subconscious mind, our unconsciousness, and we spend a lot of time there exploring ourselves. And because we are good detectives of our own lives, of our own psyche, we also play that role in society, in surrounding. We like to go deep and ask questions. Why those people act this way? Why you're doing this? Why you wear this tonight? What did you do? What was the reason of it? We like to investigate things. So these tendencies are very, very active, and emotionally speaking, we can be, a big storm, a firestorm, if we put our intensity to action. That's why, at least in Poland, we often say that Scorpio loves deadly and hates deadly. It means like if we hate something, it's the worst enemy, and if we love someone, we can be very, very possessive, and that love is incomparable in intensity to other signs expression. So that's why it's on the edge. It's very much on the edge. So the balance here is the key to really maintain that, and also to have some self-acceptance, because that's what we really need. A lot of self-acceptance, self-understanding, to be able to balance those things and find a way in that big pendulum of extremes to accept that we have that type of day, that type of feeling, give it some time, give it some place, and also not to go too extremely excited and not too extremely depressed. Basically, that's the guideline for Scorpio people: intensity, and to harness it.
Wow, thank you, brother. Yeah, there's a lot in there. I can resonate with a lot of it, and yeah, I just want to like speak first to the kind of like the navigation of the shadow aspects, because the Scorpio has an enhanced ability to maybe dive into oneself, as you expressed, and explore that sometimes often murky underworld of the inner world, as well as see and experience and perceive the perhaps the underworld of others, which maybe gives the connotations with the Scorpio as the healer, or a healer archetype, because of the ability to be able to navigate in those spaces, without maybe being worrying about the implications of oneself within that, and being able to go into those spaces without it being affected too much. But the challenge being getting lost in the darkness as well. So it's like the ability to go into the darkness, but remembering to come back out, and a familiarity with that darkness as well. I was having a really interesting conversation with my brother Mateusz Duduk last night, and we were going into like shadow material, and having like a really like open conversation about it. And I said at one point, I'm just like, I feel like really comfortable talking about this, and we were getting into some pretty deep stuff, and and both being kind of like comfortable in those spaces, and also kind of like speak to that intensity as well, because I know I see it with myself, and I see it with others, this ability and tendency towards tunnel vision, which can be a phenomenal ally, but can also create destruction. And it seems that the Scorpio does walk this tightrope between, the creation and destruction, which is one of the integral themes: birth, death, transformation. So it's kind of like being able to harness that. And because I know I've definitely gone into tunnel vision in the past and created some amazing things. And then I've also gone into tunnel vision and it's not gone well because of maybe not seen outside of that tunnel vision. So yeah, what could you share on that, bud?
I like to think about that in terms of nature. When we see the Scorpio time right here in Europe, we know it's the autumn, the fall, when the trees are going through inevitable process of dying, but this is not the permanent death. So we are shedding the skin, we are letting go of the old, and this is the transformation, letting go of all the things that were accumulated. And it looks like dying, and we look like dying sometime emotionally, psychologically speaking. But there is one sense for the Scorpio people, it's a sense of hope. So it's the light in the darkness. And that light in the darkness is the life itself, that when the tree leave lets go of all the leaves and it doesn't die really, it has that light inside, it has that sense of sleep, of the deep sleep, of peace and survival inside, having that light and life when outside winter is coming, when it's getting cold, and then waiting with patience and hope for the resurrection, for the springtime, for the new life. So that when we look in the nature, how the cycles go, we also realize that we have those cycles in our life, each sign, but Scorpio especially goes a bit more extreme with that. So we need to know that when we are falling down, just seeing our lives as this kind of, serpental movement, when we are going down, when we are going deep, not to fall completely down there, not to lose the hope, to have a core that is bright, that there is this voice saying, we'll go for it, we'll just go for it. Let us experience this difficult time and this sense of darkness and inactivity, and then let's give some patience to it, and we'll come back to life and light again. So for Scorpio people, we are really shedding our skin intensely. It can be difficult for ourselves and for the surrounding, but that hope is very important. The light is there in the depth of the shadows, and then when we put the light of our consciousness, of our awareness, to face the shadow, to have the will to understand it, to explore it, it really helps us, because that's where this healer part comes in, and the therapy aspect of going into the shadow is with the purpose. If we go into the shadow without purpose, it can overwhelm us and it can bring us to real darkness when there is no purpose of why we are doing it, when there is no light of awareness, watching ourselves, exploring the difficult, the traumatic, the desires, those tendencies. If we go down there without the light of awareness, yes, we can fall strongly. That's why it can get into violence, it can get into self-destruction. So the self-destruction itself, when we say self-destruct, we immediately tend to think about something really negative, difficult, and wrong. But when the self-destruction is for the benefit of self-creation afterwards, which means the self-destruction of purpose, of regaining strength and moving back to the light, then it's a natural process for us. So we go through it willingly or unwillingly, but we go through it. It depends on us how we touch that shadow, and then we can be really familiar and friendly with all those shadows down there. And then some of them that were difficult for us, obstaculizing us, they will not affect our lives anymore, because we just harness them, we can master them. And if we don't, then yes, they can be very difficult for us and the surroundings. So it has a lot to do with our awareness, how we go down there to this shadow. And especially it has to do with the guilt. If the guilt is there of us having the difficult part, the shadow part of the mind, then the guilt doesn't allow us to accept ourselves. So doing it without self-shaming, self-blaming, without the guilt, but just self-recognition, understanding, compassion to oneself, then we can explore it either in the personal process individually or with the help of someone holding our hand to go down there and talk about that. Then we can really have benefit for ourselves and for people that we can help with their shadows. So that's especially that practice that you said you did last time talking with your friend, when we gather together and we bring light of our conversation to our shadows, to our desires, to those moments when we feel a little bit dark or difficult. And when we talk about it, that light already brings some acceptance, understanding that Scorpio has this ability to talk about difficult things, and many people don't touch that. They don't go there with because of fear that when they will start discussing those really dark things of our mind and our lives, they have a fear that it will affect them somehow, that they will lose their the way that they want to be perceived by others, that they will lose something. There's basically a lot of fear, and when we go fearlessly there, exploring with the light of acceptance and investigation, suddenly we realize that it's not that dark, and we take a bigger perspective of time and history, perspective of human nature and cycles of nature and time and archetypes. We realize, yeah, that's not that dark really, and if it is dangerous, we can just find solution to master it, to harness it, to harmonize it, so it doesn't destroy neither us or other people. So the very important part of the shadow is to not walk into the shadow unprepared, to walk there with the light, with the covered light inside in our heart, in the intention that we are doing it with a purpose. So I like to always bring that perspective, that majority of human processes in mind goes that way, that we chase love and we run away from fear because we want things that are lovely and beautiful and good, and we try to run away from fears and darkness. And while we can actually find a new way to turn it around and have love, light, goodness, kindness behind us, supporting us, and facing the difficulty, the shadow, the challenges. So moving that arrow around helps a lot, going consciously with intent into the difficult, the fear, but knowing that there is some light supporting us. It helps a lot to go through those processes, and it reminds me of one thing that we do to ourselves. And as Scorpio person, I see that a lot in me and in other intense Scorpio characters, that we play that game of falling down and then waiting for something that will save us, and going out, like falling down into the mud and waiting for the rope to for something to save us, to pull out of the mud, and then just realizing that we are all of that. We are the ones who prepare the mud, we are the ones jumping into it, and we are the ones who prepare the rope to save ourselves. We keep doing this cycle to ourselves, playing all those roles. And once we realize that we create this cycle, it helps us to understand a bit better that, especially as Scorpios, we really somehow have taste of falling down. There is a taste for it. There's a small hunger that wants us to experience that painful, that difficult, and there is this strong taste later on to experience the whole process of transformation and saving. And now I went through that, and then falling again, and it continuously goes like that. So if we understand that this is a kind of entertainment that we give to ourselves, then we can play that game, like with more enjoyment, just like a sports person, going through the pain, but knowing that we'll find enjoyment in that to achieve something. The same thing here, but most importantly, not to harm ourselves, not to harm others in the middle of that process. So having that kind of entertainment game in some more controllable and safe environment, that's what can help. Just like watching a horror movie, knowing that we'll just feel scared, but watching it with intent to experience that, knowing that it's just a movie, it doesn't harm others. Because going down there to that pain, to that shadow of a Scorpio, we are touching part of our essence. It's part of the essence of this archetype. I don't say it's the essence of the soul on the higher level. I would say it's the part of the essence of this human behavior and experiencing this archetype is that we carry the poison inside. Scorpio animal has the poison in itself. So not touching that poison is allowing the poison which is already there to poison us. And if we know, and we know in which part of us the poison exists, we can manage that to give it the quality of the medicine, to know when to use it, in which dosage. So that poison, carrying poison inside for the Scorpio, can be very relieving, and bringing that realization that because we have that already inside, without rejecting it, we can just master it and know how to use it to make ourselves stronger. And that brings me just to one more thing regarding our bodies as Scorpios. That old lady, that astrologist witch that was analyzing me in the past, she said that because of the poison you have in yourself, your body can often go through toxic moments, and sometimes you can have sicknesses that you are not even aware of, and have them and clean them, purify them, and detoxify yourself easier than others. Because of having poison inside of you in the system, we can sometimes take a bit more of difficult things and detoxify ourselves easier. So it helps both for the type of work that Scorpio likes to do with oneself, and in career often we face some things that can be toxic, but we have that ability, both psychologically speaking and physically speaking, to allow it to be detoxified quicker than other signs. Yay, shadow work.
Shadow work. Yeah, it's like, oh man, so much comes up there, and I keep thinking of in Lord of the Rings, where the Frodo and Sam are in Shelob's cave, and the spider's coming for them, and then Sam reaches in and pulls out the star glass, a light to shine when all other lights go out, and kind of shine that light in the darkness, and really like feels like that kept coming in when you were sharing. And also what comes up is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek the most. And it's interesting what you share about the Scorpio's ability to kind of synthesize the poison and detoxify it, and so speaks of the alchemy that comes through looking at the shadows within oneself, because we all have them. Like there's no getting away from them. And it's interesting when something irritates us about someone else, or maybe even a stronger emotion. Maybe we move to a place of disgust or hatred for something or someone that someone's done. I always go with the practice of like looking at oneself, because it's just like, why is that so deeply triggering for me? And could it be that there's some aspect of that playing out within myself? And I think that kind of looking at the shadows and appreciating that it's a part of life, and being able to go into that place means that you're able to get that star glass, and the shadows aren't so big anymore. And also, I think if you're actively looking at the shadows, then they're not going to be able to have such a tendency to sneak up on you. Of course, you also need to be extremely wary when you are looking at the shadows, and not fall into the trap of thinking that you can see all the shadows, because you'll fall into a trap, no doubt. So it's just like, I think for myself, like a healthy perspective to have and live by, that I'm finding works for me. It may work for others, it may not resonate with others, but I kind of think it's quite healthy for me to be actively looking at this shadow material, because I don't want something to sneak up on me through some unconscious behavior that I then exhibit, that then like harms someone else or harms myself. Like the burst of anger, or the reactionary state that operates from something that isn't resolved, or something that isn't aware of. And I think that alchemy is such a strong, potent theme of Scorpio, the transformation. And I think that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek the most. So it speaks to me of like, when we do go into that cave, when we do look at those shadows, and when we do like synthesize that poison, detoxify that poison, that therein is the gold, and that gold is, you know, a new understanding of self, a new ability to move into greater strength, a greater ability to cultivate power and personal empowerment for ourselves through working through and integrating those shadows. So kind of like getting them to a place whereby we can see them, so that they're not operating on us. And yeah, I'd love to switch to the topic of transformation, actually, because this is like such a potent theme for Scorpio. And I've recognized this as well. I love this perspective, by the way, of it just like being this game where like, we jump in the mud and we actually realize that we're just doing it all. This is really funny because, yeah, I enjoy laughing at myself. I enjoy laughing at Scorpio because it's you gotta laugh sometimes. I think we have an ability to have a dark sense of humor as well. So, but like the transformative aspect of Scorpio, and you know, I think we do. I definitely agree in that we attract pain, and I think on some deep level we understand that actually pain is one of the most powerful locomotives for consciousness. Uh, Pain quickens consciousness. You know, we touch the fire, we get burned, and go through that developmental collision, and then learn not to touch the fire until, I guess, we come to a place whereby we can recognize that actually we don't need to put ourselves in so much pain necessarily in order to transform. So yeah, I want to open the topic of transformation by just talking about Lord of the Rings a little bit, because like I'm so happy to find out that me, you, and your partner Nina have got this deep love for Lord of the Rings. And yeah, when we look at transformation, I always like look at like Gandalf's fall and Gandalf's plunge into the depths of Moria after he defeats the Balrog, or put the first stage of the defeat of the Balrog. And he plummets after the Balrog. And I think one of the best moments of my childhood is where he catches the sword in midair. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So Gandalf is plunging through into the bowels of the earth, fighting a demon from the ancient world. And they plunge into the darkness, and then they're really in the depths of the mountain. And then he follows the Balrog to the top of the highest peak, and he then casts the shadow down. As I smote his ruin on the mountainside. And then after casting down the shadow, Gandalf then essentially dies. He goes into the other realm, and he's sent back and is utterly transformed from Gandalf the Grey into Gandalf the White through his struggles. So I see this story as like a really powerful metaphor for, again, the cave in the hero's journey, which seems like a synonymous theme with Scorpio, and as well as alchemization of the shadow. So we can kind of maybe see Gandalf's transformation as a powerful metaphor for the transformative energy of Scorpio, and also the Balrog, the demon, as the shadow within ourselves that we can battle, maybe overtly in this way, maybe more compassionately, but still integrating and battling that shadow. Because I know in ancient Tolkien lore, the Balrog and Gandalf were actually from the same order.
Mm-hmm.
But the Balrog had been corrupted. So yeah, like what would your thoughts be on Gandalf's journey, as well as how that could perhaps tie into the transformative aspect of the Scorpio archetype?
I really love that part of the story because it has to do a lot with what I mentioned, with bringing the light to the darkness, because we know that Gandalf, when he faced Balrog, he mentioned the light and the flame, and he invoked basically the light to face him. So he said to him, "Go back to the shadow, the flame of Udun, by the light of the Valars." And he was calling these qualities, and then he actually realized, after, at least in that visual scene, we can see that first confrontation was seamlessly, he almost fought him, he almost conquered him, but then he realized that he needs to go deeper to actually deal with Balrog. and he goes down there, he dives deep into the depths of Moria. And it's important that Scorpio, as a fixed sign, has a lot of persistence and a lot of, this quality of holding on to the goal and accomplishing the goal. So he was chasing Balrog, I think, for 5 days, if I'm not wrong, in the book. So there was a constant movement from the depths to the highest peak. So he did not give up. He, he bought already some time for the fellowship by, going after Balrog, but he didn't give up. He chased him. He took him to the peak, and then he also dies, and he had to die in order to come back in a new form. That's another Scorpio thing. That when Gandalf came back in the new form, Gandalf the White, we remember that moment when he heard Gandalf and like, oh yes, I used to be called by this name. Oh yes, I was Gandalf. That's true. It's something that happens often to us Scorpio people, that we realize as we move through life, we change our faces with phases. We change our lives, we change our skin. And sometimes from the side, looking at Scorpio's life, it looks like Scorpio goes through the life, through so many stages and transformations, that when people meet Scorpio person after some years, it's already a different person few times. Like we go through lifetimes in one life. So we change the way we live, we change the way we look like. People sometimes tell us, oh, you change, you look different, you act different. Yes, because we already died and we're not the same person. We are the new person again. The more intense we go through processes and transformations, the more visible it is. So it's like different chapters, and Gandalf opened up a different chapter, letting go. And because he fulfilled his mission, he was called back. I think the Eru was the one who, the spirit of Eru, that wanted Gandalf back to help the Fellowship and help to bring balance in the world, because it realized that Gandalf actually really accomplished what he supposed to do with the darkness, and sacrificed his life. And this word sacrifice is very good key word for Scorpio. Sacrifice, we tend to sacrifice, and we need to understand what sacrificial means in its etymology, because now we think often as sacrifice related to the suffering, to the pain, to giving something, paying for something, offering something. But we often see sacrifice as something difficult. But the word sacrifice comes from sacro officio in Latin, which means sacred work. So something that is done with respect, something that is done for something higher and bigger. So we are very idealistic in that sense. When we Scorpio people find something that is higher, that is of highest importance, we are able to really overcome the deepest darkness. That's why Scorpio person needs a goal, needs a purpose. The higher, the better, because then we are able to really, lift ourselves up from the deepest darkness. That's the transformation that it goes through, because of the death being the end for some. But in terms of Scorpio, we talk about death as necessity to give space for new light, to really let go of the old ways. And if Scorpio doesn't learn from the old skin, the past, will die again in the similar way. So we need to really take in account what brought us to that place, shadow, darkness, and meet with another type of darkness next time. Otherwise we don't develop, otherwise we're just in the same mud again and again. So after going through intensity of darkness, going back to the light, we need to find a little bit higher goal, higher perspective, to dedicate ourselves. Sacrificial as dedication, to dedicate ourselves to higher goal. That's why in the darkness of the light of the Scorpio, sometimes they tend to be very fanatic, because they think they dedicate their intensity to something really bright. Now, they can be very fanatic, and that fanatism can also attract the dark aspects of it. So that's why we need to understand that not everyone is able to be so intense as we are, and we somehow are special agents in a way for different activities and going really into the depths. And it's not healthy for everyone. I learned that all my life, that because of going into intensity of things, the depth, penetrating things deeper, and talking and exploring things that are difficult and challenging, I need to be mindful that it's not good for everyone, that not everyone is able to survive that type of poison or darkness. Some people need more shallow, more surface things that works for them best in order to keep the harmony and the role in society. That's why Scorpio makes a good detective, good investigator, working with those strong topics, both in their career life and their hobbies and what they like to do. And that's something that it's for them. It's a special mission kind of thing. That's why Gandalf jumped down there. He said to the rest of the fellowship, he said, you have no abilities, no powers to deal with such evil. That's why he jumped there. Run, you fools, because you have your mission to go. And he knew that he had his own mission and he was capable of doing it. Sometimes with Scorpio, we have this narrow tunneled vision that we also sometimes believe in ourselves a bit more than our capacity. We can sometimes think that we can deal with things without help of anyone. Our self-perfectionism tells us that we can do things the best way. We are so perfect, or the things will only come out well if we ourselves alone focus on them. And we need to create a bit wider perspective and include others, and create a safe surrounding for accomplishing it together. So Gandalf, best way to describe Scorpio to someone in terms of a story, because all the process he went through and how it affected the whole journey, that was very Scorpio thing to do.
Yeah. I think yeah, I've been explaining it in those terms to people recently, because and using that archetype, because I think it's easy to, I think like the stereotype of the archetype is that oh, watch out for them, you're gonna get stung, and it's just like dark, like kind of shadowy, which it is and definitely can be, but also kind of like looking at the beauty of it as well, because each of the zodiac archetypes, there's the shadow and the light, and each sign is deeply beautiful. And yeah, like to speak to that kind of that aspect of wanting to take it on all ourselves as well, because I definitely have this. And like especially recently, it's actually come up that the more I'm actually asking for help and support from people, the more actually this is opening up onto really beautiful things, because there's a tendency for like loner wolf behavior, and kind of the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone; if you want to go far, go together. And I think like I've definitely been in the fast and alone for a long time, and part part of the process I go through at the moment is opening up onto that support, and more like trust in others. But then there's the challenge with vulnerability, and this is something that really learning. I've been looking at this for a while now, and our kind of deep desire for intimacy, because this is like another big keyword for Scorpio, I think, is like intimacy, and that real strong desire to be intimate with another person, and having that merging, and the depth of that love that we really want to share. And this is myself and like many Scorpios that I talk to, it's this very common theme, like there's this deep well of love, but a real challenge to give that love, or find that situation or that person to be able to be vulnerable enough to open up to give that love. And it's like a bit of a paradox, really. It's just like we want vulnerability and we want intimacy. Actually, no, we want the intimacy, but the path to the intimacy is through the vulnerability. But there seems like a very, very strong challenge with being vulnerable. You know, if we look at the scorpion, it's got its armor on. You know, you don't want to go near it because there's, you know, you might get stung. But you know, under there's a soft underbelly that it won't want to show you. So it seems like this interesting paradox, and it's kind of almost like it's kind of set up in that, okay, the psychology is set so that you get the intimacy if you learn to be vulnerable, and that's the only way in which you're going to get the intimacy. And it seems like this hurdle for a Scorpio to overcome, and you know, I think with that also comes the challenges with trust as well, because we seem to have challenges with trust. And I think when Scorpio does let another person in, and you know, usually it's not many people. I don't have many people that are kind of in that kind of like circle where I can feel like I can truly kind of be vulnerable. That circle's expanding slowly. And in fact, just talking about this right now makes me kind of contract, because it's just like, oh no, you're going into like this vulnerable territory on the podcast. Oh no, like you know, but it's just like that's what I'm trying to actually break through. But yeah, like when we are able to be vulnerable and go into that place of trust, it's beautiful and amazing. But then I think then when the trust is when we feel that the trust is maybe betrayed, this can then give the reputation for the revenge, because it's kind of like the really, you know, the Scorpio to give the trust is like a really, really big thing. And if that trust is not handled well, then it can cause, I think it can cause this very strong rebound, and the Scorpio goes even more into the armoring and even more into the distrust. So yeah, what could you share around that, around, you know, trust, vulnerability, and intimacy, please, Tommy?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a favorite topic for Scorpio people. Intimacy, vulnerability, trust, distrust. Because we were very suspicious and investigative towards other people. We investigate a lot ourselves, our own mind. We can easily see things in other people. And they say that it's hard to hide something from Scorpio's eyes, because we see that, and because of that we also don't like people to see too much of our, you know, personal things, our private things in our close surrounding. We like to be secretive and hide things, but also it has to do a lot with shadow. And there is something that can help a lot of Scorpio people, and not only to understand how this trust and distrust works in our psyche. And when we learn that in early childhood, especially, it has to do with people that were raised in families where parents or grandparents were addicted to something strongly. And we know that Scorpio itself has tendency to be addicted towards something and be having a very addictive personality. Like, people get addicted to Scorpios, and Scorpios get addicted to things. And when we go through a syndrome that is called, if I say it well in English, the adult children of alcoholic families, it means that if there was someone in the family that shown one face when was sober and another face when was, let's say, drunk, for example, that child gains distrust in seeing the parent or grandparent or someone in family close having two faces, having the dark side exposed when was half conscious or unconscious, and emotionally harming the child. That creates a certain distrust that is then projected to relationships a lot. And that brings a series of different fears. And what we are talking about here with vulnerability is that one fear says that we have a dark part inside of us, and we don't allow other people to get too close to us, because what will happen if they get to know our darkness? if they get to know our darkness, maybe they will reject us. And that rejection is something that we don't like to experience. That's one of the fears. So the fear is based on the concept that there is a shadow part, the darkness in us, that we are scared and shy to express, to show, to get anyone to know about it, because of fear of being judged, rejected, and that it's something that we don't accept ourselves truly yet. The remedy for that is definitely accepting our own darkness and shadow, and accepting and affirming that, yes, I do experience this and that. Sometimes I feel like this and that. This is my shadow part. This is something that is difficult in me, in my behavior, in my dark part of my mind. And yet, I can truly and deeply love and accept myself. So, regardless of other people's opinion and other people's presence, I can express myself the way I am, even though I sometimes express myself in a shadow way. So, full acceptance there is remedy to um, have a little bit more trust in relationships with others, because even if they betray us, it doesn't hurt us because we don't identify ourselves so much with that part. But yes, this is a very big topic for Scorpio people. That's why they get very controlling, over controlling, very, wanting to know everything about everyone that gets close to them. They like to have everything on under their terms, because that way they can feel safest. If the control is there, they feel safe. If someone is getting too close, they already have that alert mode. So it makes them go far away from the feeling of love and emotional intimacy, because they don't really allow people to get too close to them. So, like I mentioned, remedy is self acceptance and step by step allowing people to go closer and letting go of that traumatic feeling that is really a bad thing to happen if someone disagree, if someone rejects us, because that, disagreement, rejection, and judgment is not really that deadly. It's deadly for our fears. We really are scared and afraid of that. But getting more familiar with that feeling that it's fine, that it can be accepted, and we can still survive if someone disagree with us, if someone rejects us, it helps a bit more to open up, because with opening up we gain more benefits actually than with feeling so secure and keeping everyone, away. So translating that to subconscious mind, that I benefit from opening up, and I always open up to right people in right time, in right amount. So we really need to learn that, to be flexible, and with that we can always give ourselves space and give ourselves right to keep our boundaries, not spiky boundaries, not toxic trap, like if you go too far you get destroyed. No, it's like when you go this far you will just get information from me. I need my time, I need to change this conversation to something else, let's not go further. And allowing slowly, we need to accept that we go slowly with trusting people, and that's fine. That's our characteristic. This is very fine. But if it bothers us, little by little we open up with other people. That's why it's great for Scorpio person to go for any types of therapy, when they can get familiar with sharing with person that is, not your close person. Is a therapist. It's a person not known to you, so you can openly, anonymously share your things. It really helps to them to just, little by little learn how to talk about their feelings, because that's something that we are really, really scared of when it has to do with other people coming close to our dark part of us. So we like to talk about dark stuff, but there's some things that where we feel very touchy. We're very touchy about it. So then when we move to intimacy in relationship, in close relationships, and the sexual potential of the Scorpio, wow, there's a lot there, because when Scorpio makes love, it's not only physical love, it loves everything, to bring everything into that process. So Scorpio brings that love, intimate aspect to to the psyche, to emotional, to spiritual, visible, invisible, in all realms. Scorpio loves to include everything in love-making act, like all the senses. It actually demands, requires in that intimacy to be able to touch everything on the physical, on the emotional, psychological aspect. It takes everything or nothing in that sense, and the small bite in intimacy is not enough for the Scorpio usually. So that's why they can be great lovers in that sense, but also can be very intense. So they need to learn that not everyone is on the same level of potential, and that's why, you know, the where you put two Scorpio together in a relationship, that's like super, you know, can be very dangerous, can be very strong, and can be very, they usually in astrology they say that two Scorpio people, when they are in love affair, they can create a strong sense of common addiction to each other, physically, emotionally. They sometimes destroy each other's if they are not compatible and don't know how to manage that. But it's hard for them to separate, because the addiction towards each other energy is pretty strong. So Scorpio person, if you meet Scorpio person and think about that intimacy aspect, it's important that it has to do on all the levels: the spiritual level, the psychological level, emotional level. That's where those locks open up. And once this connection is established, yeah, the Scorpio will open the whole treasure box of possibilities, and it really loves to have it all. So slowly, but once it happens, it can be very intense. Now, this on the Scorpio side, we need to just manage that very well, because if it's either everything or nothing, we tend to hide from that, not being able to open our heart, engage our actual love, goodness, kindness feeling into relationship. So we need to learn how to do that instead of just activating the sensual aspect of it. And then, you know, bringing a good verbal communication with another person. Knowing that you are dealing with Scorpio helps a lot. It just helps a lot. Knowing that archetype, it brings more understanding. Okay, we need to just, you know, explore that and open up here and there. Then things will flow precisely, you know, the way we like. Just like on the other side of the zodiac, when we see, you know, the other water sign, the Cancer, knowing that Cancer needs first feeling of security and safety and this type of loving quality. Knowing that you're dealing with such person helps a lot to use your language properly, to speak, to communicate properly first, in order to get where you're supposed to get in that relationship. So Scorpio's intensity in trust, it's either everything or nothing. So if you betray Scorpio, it can be very, very difficult for you. Like, better not betray a Scorpio person. They become worst enemies usually, unless they engage powers of forgiveness and understanding. That's the key word for them: forgiveness, letting go, reconciliation, self-acceptance. And then the trust is built slowly, but once it's there, they can be very, very loyal. Right? Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, perfect sense, mate, perfect sense. And yeah, I think with that kind of more that vengeful aspect, I think that Scorpio doesn't really care about going down with the ship sometimes as well, if they've been kind of like really crossed, which is kind of like a, yeah, it's a dangerous quality to be on the receiving end of potentially. And yeah, like I know that like sex and sexual contact is very important for the archetype, um and it's kind of like looking for this merging quality, and wants to like merge with those around them, to understanding that that merging creates such a deep level of intimacy. But like you say, it might be too much for some people. But what does and it may use or may work with sex as a locomotive for that merging to happen, as well as maybe other ways as well. So what could you say to this kind of this desire for the merging for Scorpio, and as well as like in the context of the astrological journey, because we're kind of going from Aries as the baby to Pisces as the all, and we kind of see Scorpio as coming after Libra, the sign of partnerships, and then moving into the some sort of death of self. And I'm just wondering whether that how the merging and perhaps working with sex as a means to do that ties in with the death in relationship to the journey on the wheel. If that will make sense.
Yeah, you see, if we watch Scorpio in this timeline, we realize that it's kind of this time of life when we already got to know some aspects of life, the relationships, career, physical part, the material part, the society, and then we go through a process of asking for a deeper purpose, better understanding, meaning. It's search for meaning. So that's why the merge is we dive into something to find the actual meaning of it, because without the meaning we don't want to continue. That's why it's like either we merge completely, we touch the essence, or it doesn't matter to us anymore. We search where the essence will be, where we have opportunity to merge, to dedicate ourselves truly, either with our life activity or just with our mental part, our psyche, our interests, our where we are going to. We want to actually touch it deep and be sure of what we are merging with, of what we are touching is truth, is truthful. We're really in search of essential core aspects of things. So that's why sexually it's like, no, Scorpio has this kind of instinctual sense, understanding that sexual activity is a merge, is a fusion of not only bodies but souls, energies, and it likes to see it as a dance of something more than just on the physical realm. That's why it's a search of going just deep, just like we don't like to swim a little bit under the surface. We like to see what's down there, why it's so dark, what lives there, what's inside of it, how is your life like, not only the way you look like, but how is your life like, what do you feel, what are your fears, what going deeper and deeper. That's that part of life when we spend our life doing things, and then we start asking ourselves what's the actual real meaning. Just like in older age, we ask those questions. People that are not into spirituality at all, or not into religion at all, after some time, when they are getting closer to the other side, they realize that their energy level in the body is lower, the amount of energy that they can put into things is limited, it's powerful when it's focused. Then they ask themselves question, what is the meaning? What do I do with my life, with my focus, with my attention? That's why often people in certain age start asking those important questions. They become more religious, they become more spiritual, they start searching for the sense of life and sense of each action that they do. What is the actual meaning of what I'm doing? And that's how I see Scorpio in the chart. This is the part where we actually try to find out the arrow, where are we going to, because death is inevitable. So what do we say in the face of death? And that's this question of how my life was when I actually face the end of it. So those are deep Scorpio questions. And in our chart, I always perceive the Scorpio part as those important life under the surface meanings. So yeah, and the merging is the tool for that. You don't just touch it, you don't just listen about it, you don't just talk about it, you go into it. That's what we like to do. Just like Tata Pedro used to say, in religion you talk about God, but in spirituality you talk with God, and you want to touch the essence. That's why you work directly with the elements and start asking important questions.
I love that. Exactly. You don't talk about God, you talk with God.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite strong. Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you. I'd love to shift gears a little bit and talk about another central dynamic of the Scorpio archetype, and that being power.
Mm-hmm.
Power being a very interesting subject, because there's so many, like all of these subjects, so many angles and so many ways to look at it. And there's the light expression of our personal empowerment and utilizing personal power to create agency within our lives and be able to be in a space whereby we're able to express and give love in the most effective way. I like to think of it in terms of the third chakra is below the fourth chakra. So therefore, if the third chakra is in a healthy, balanced way, and we are expressing and utilizing our personal power, this creates a fantastic platform for love to be expressed and received. But also there are many pitfalls that come with power, and all you have to do is take a short look on the news to see many examples of the misuse and abuse of power. So yeah, just want to open up the topic of power, coming back to Lord of the Rings, actually, because it's also a central theme of Lord of the Rings, whereby like power in Lord of the Rings is represented by the ring and the seduction of that power, ruining Gollum and massively influencing everyone around it. The entire story revolves around this tiny object. Like how can the fate of so many be ruled by something so small? And influencing Frodo, Bilbo, Sam, and Boromir even dying for his lust of the power that the ring represents. So power is key theme of the Scorpio archetype, and I kind of like divided this question into two parts. One being the looking at the yin, what I perceive and are calling the yin power shadow, and then the second part being what I call the yang power shadow. So yin power shadow being like a lack of power and the challenges that come from that, and then the yang being an overbearing, over dominance of power. So I'll start with the yin kind of deficient power shadow. So the archetype seems to attract a lot of pain, much to do, I feel, with some of the lower natures of Scorpio. So the pain, as we discussed, is then potentially used as a fuel to power the transformation. Now, through the pain, there can be a tendency towards victimhood and disempowerment, with the victim often being caught in a dance of power and disempowerment that we can kind of see with Gollum within Lord of the Rings. So he's very much a victim to the power of the ring, that then goes on to actually victimize others. So there's this kind of like dynamic between victim, persecutor, and also within that triangle often is like a rescuer as well, somewhere within that triangle of drama. And the roles flip, it's just not fixed. So victim will become pure persecutor might become rescuer, and rescuer might even become victim or persecutor. So it kind of goes around. So yeah, what could you share around the dynamics of victimhood and power or disempowerment within respect to the Scorpio archetype?
Yeah, the power is very important for the Scorpio archetype. Definitely, when we talk about power in English language, we have power, one word to describe those two aspects of. One thing is like the commanding power, the rulership, the political part of to have power over something, over someone, and then the power as force, as the energy, as the strength in those aspects. So it's a big deal in the world that power is like a drug. It's very addictive, and what we see with Gollum is that missing that power that he once had in his hands motivates him to do everything that he can to come back to it. And that's this representation of seeing the power as the solution to our problems, that more power will give resolve some problems. Thinking that we need more power is one of the part of this shadow. More power means more control, more power means more abilities, and it has to do again with the chase that we imagine that once we get stronger, once we get more influential, the things will be just better, because that's the idea, that's the illusion that we have inside. Of course, the self-power is the solution to that. Self-power means self-mastery of what we have already, because the power in deficiency or too much power, both of it is just not good for oneself and for others. We see there regarding the ring, Gandalf knowing that he cannot really hold the ring because he would become so powerful and he would misuse it, and bad things may happen out of good intent. He was all bright and wise, but his wisdom also told him that with so much energy, there with so much possibility and the power, he would misuse it. So that's like, depending on what we have in our subconscious mind, depending on what are our complexes that we have, often those that come from the childhood and early time of our life, when we give power to it, then they also start having power over us. That's why we see it often in the world, that people that have low self-esteem and they become more powerful because of money, attention, position, that low self-esteem from early stage of life can lead them to difficult decisions and actions towards themselves and others. So the ring in the Lord of the Rings, containing a lot of potential influence, power, abilities, depending on in which hands it was put, it actually empowered their hidden things. So that's what happened. It's a lot of chi, it's a lot of prana, a lot of energy that we put there, and the Scorpio is always searching for it. It's always searching for the charging, the battery. And if Scorpio looks at other people as as one's batteries, no, then can use his abilities to control others in order to fulfill her own desires and things that one wants to achieve. It's one part of the Scorpio, victimizing other and making them victims of his own desires to become more powerful. That's something that can happen often with Scorpios. That's why we see in relationships, in politics, and the Scorpios, they just like spiders. They take other people as victims to use them as batteries, so they can have that vampiristic tendencies, because they realize that the life energy, attention of other people can make them feel very, very powerful. They like to be in the group of people as the ones who are the most receiving attention, because they receive a lot of strength and power, and it's up to them how they use it. So using it properly, it can bring the whole group forward. Using it in sense of misusing it, it can just make everything collapse. So knowing what power gives, this is a potential talent or a danger for the Scorpio person. So it's good to ask question always before acting upon acquiring more. The question why, what for? So knowing what for, really, is it good, is it beneficial, is it really needed? If the intention of the Scorpio person acquiring power is good for oneself and others, and it's all fine, because then they can be very charismatic with what they do, and it can bring them into certain leadership as well. But if the intention is not so good and comes from lower self-esteem, then that person gets easily trapped into the trap of power and falls down. We see that in the world, we see that in small groups, we see that in big groups. So it's a keyword around, but the power for Scorpio is different than the power for Leo, for example. It's a different types of energy, because in Scorpio it really has to do with manipulation on the dark side, manipulating, making impressions on this dark side, dark expression. And on the positive side is to use that charge of energy to penetrate, to go deeper, to find out solutions that were not found by others before. So in the story of Lord of the Rings, we see that the best solution was to let go of that ring, actually, to destroy it, because using that type of power for one person only is putting everyone else under, under the rulership of that person. So it's used and seen as a weapon, sort of weapon. So letting go of that is for the benefit of all. If one person has too much power, that's what happens. So each one of them wanted to have that power to fulfill some often selfish, in matter of fact, in the end, selfish desires, to help others, also from the selfish intent that one will become so powerful with such a huge tool to have impact on the world. So that's why Scorpio can acquire a lot of energy, a lot of power, and needs to know where to put it in harmonious way, because otherwise it can be very destructive. And the lack of power, it's all that I said about the complexes, has so much to do with the self-esteem and how the person developed early on, and feeling that has deficiencies, the needs, because then is searching for power in many ways to finally substitute this needs, the hunger that was not fulfilled usually early on. Yay.
Yeah, thank you, brother. So interesting, and yeah, I was really like what you're sharing around the reflections of the motivation and the energy behind the power, because a person could take the same action, but the outcome be completely different based off of the energy that went into that action, and the energy by which the person is exhibiting and moving with. And also think the power is, as you alluded to, a magnifier of what's inside. So and power coming in many different ways, whether that's influence with people, whether it's financial power. It's we look at how the intentions of certain people with money around the world. I mean, I think of Bill Gates, actually, because Bill Gates is Scorpio, and I see this guy as like big spider operating in the world at the moment. And you're seeing his power being mainly monetary, but also influential, and seeing kind of what's being done with that power. It's very alarming. And yeah, it's just we'll want to kind of like maybe also speak about like the yang power shadow, which we've touched on already, and kind of from the angle of it being plutonic power. So Pluto being one of the key archetypes, the celestial bodies that are associated with Scorpio. So Pluto being one of the rulers, not Mars being the other. And we look at this plutonic power, it's nuclear power, plutonium. So if we think about like a nuclear power reactor, it's pretty much a almost inexhaustible source of power. But that nuclear reactor can also blow up and create devastation and destruction, and in the worst extreme, actually weaponized into a nuclear bomb. So yeah, I guess like it kind of feels like between these power dynamics that Scorpio ha has a heightened sense of as part of the archetype to learn the lessons around within this lifetime. It feels like it's very much walking a tightrope, and not just Scorpio. Obviously, you know, everyone's going to have their trials with these dynamics at some stage or other. But if we're walking a tightrope, with maybe on one falling on one end, one side of the tightrope is utter disempowerment and victimhood, and on the other side of the tightrope is kind of turning into the tyrant with the misuse and abuse and of power and turning into like a persecutor. How can you suggest moving towards the place of balanced power, whereby we're able to really cultivate that personal power and take agency within our lives, and be, rather than these destructive forces either to self or other, be more of this guiding starlight in the dark? That is one of the higher qualities of the Scorpio archetype, because you know that also feels like, you know, it feels like a almost like a much more polarized sign than a number of the other signs, because there is these kind of dizzying highs and crushing lows, and you know, all of the very low vibrational shadow material that is associated with Scorpios, so like the jealousy, the manipulation, the power plays, you know, all of this stuff, and the potential of actually being like this guiding light. You know, it seems like there's such a polarity there. So, yeah, how do you feel that one can work towards the balanced utilization of their personal power to create agency and be that guiding light for others in the more higher expression of the Scorpio archetype?
Hmm. It's very important for Scorpio to, first of all, engage in practices that have to do with self exploration of what is in one's mind, to find the reasons and realize the why, the motivation before acting, because what I already mentioned, the result depends highly from the intent, the intention before acting. So Scorpio sign in that extreme behavior is following a huge hunger. And what can work the best for Scorpio people is when they really learn how to deal with hunger itself, emotional hunger, hunger for seeing things out there and finding their what I call the point of satisfaction. Because that tendency of misusing things comes often from not being satisfied what already is, or from the amount of what we have, in sense of, if we just master the patience and see that we can satisfy our own needs with less intense, with less destructive, with less that have to do with other people, then we realize that, you know, mastering and harnessing our own needs, our own hungers, can help us to really maintain our own strength, to choose wisely where we put our force into. So to simplify it, is like fasting is a very good practice for Scorpio people, to fast, to observe our physical hunger in the beginning, because in that way we see that we can abstain from acting impulsively. The worst thing is impulsive Scorpio with power, because when Scorpio is with a lot of strength, with a lot of capacity to act, and is impulsive, then, you know, it's unexpected. What can really happen is unpredictable. So that's why being satisfied with small things is a very good practice for Scorpio people, because we like more, can be very ambitious, we like to conquer, to see life through the filter of challenges, and it motivates us. But in order to keep ourselves balanced, we ask ourselves why. We wait before we act, and often visualizing what will be the outcome, how will we feel after. This helps a lot, just like with the desire of sexual act. Of course, the desire is there, but if we just take a moment and imagine how it will be after that, after it's all finished, then it can give us the answer. Should we engage in that, or should we just wait and be more peaceful and patient with things? So that's why, asking the question why is so important, and having a sense of stillness. Just like I imagine a very rich person like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, those people, when they have a lot of tools in their hands, a lot of strength and power and resources, what they are often doing out there in the world, they believe that what they believe in, what is their vision, that it has to do with the wider aspects of the world, wider population, and they feel like they can bring a big change to the world. Of course they can, because a lot of resources and power gives a lot of abilities, but also a lot of responsibility. So there comes the question, is it really necessary? Is it really my role? Is it really my mission to move that energy forward? Am I really doing it properly? Why? The question why is so essential, because in the same time we can use it in so many other places, in so many other ways and forms. So that young aspect, that active aspect of using power, the ignorance there is happening because of lack of asking the essential questions, why, reflecting, and giving some time, abstaining from action, abstaining from listening to all type of advisors and people telling us what to do, just getting into that essence. And then we see that maybe something more simple, more humble is the actual higher mission of or purpose of having those resources in our hands. So this higher aspect of Scorpio is the eagle that sees things from the wide perspective, sees well the future, is a good strategist. And that's important. The strategy means to see the outcome of things. And that's the higher aspect of eagle, being able to see far what will be the outcome of my actions and using that vision before acting. So Scorpio really needs to have a lot of time in meditation. That's the best thing, just meditating actively, dynamically, meditating still, but meditating and observing before acting. That's the best thing we can do as Scorpio people, just not to be reactive, because then we are really, the nuclear reactors, and something goes wrong, it's a big deal already, because a lot of energy is moved into action. If we are a strong nuclear reactor, but with a purpose, with a good strategy, with thinking already ahead of time, why, what for, then we can bring a lot of good, harmonious energy and support and empowerment to people around us. But that's the most important thing, the motivation before, the intention before, the reflection before, and knowing that maybe we are not the wisest in the world. Maybe we should just wait, observe, and think twice and more times before we put that strong energy into action. That's what I would recommend to all people, and Scorpios, especially in their intensity. Just wait. Why am I doing it? What is the real reason behind? And often that silence, that time, that patience helps a lot to harmonize and have better decisions.
Yeah, I love that, particularly the strategizing and really thinking things through beforehand, and so that energy is best known. So we know where best to place the energy as well, because I think being fixed can be difficult to also change the path. So it's like, if that fixation goes into an area that's maybe not the best and for the highest good for either ourselves or others, it can be then difficult to change from that path. So yeah, really strategizing and really looking at things ahead of time to make sure that plutonic laser-like energy is pointed in the
Mhm.
right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, thank you. But I've it's been an amazing time together. I've got a couple more questions before we wrap up, but we could no doubt chat all night. But I know it's getting quite late in Poland right now, so
Mhm.
yeah, I guess I just want to speak to as we close, like speak to the Scorpios' feeling of love, and for all of the kind of challenging aspects that we've spoken about tonight. You know, my understanding and my feeling and my experience and internalization of myself, as well as speaking to many Scorpios, is our capacity and ability to really feel love at like a very, very deep level. And you know, we touched on this with the intimacy, and you know, if I was to describe it, it's kind of like the kind of love whereby when someone says I would die for you, I would actually literally die for you. Or in terms of Scorpio, I'd kill for you as well. And maybe
Mhm.
help you hide the body if you killed someone. This kind of love. And it's kind of like the but deeper than that in terms of um like the it feels like the full giving of oneself over to someone or something. And yeah, again, like kind of like that fixed nature, and that kind of desire and ability to just really feel to the depths of oneself, and also the desire to also maybe feel that from another as well. So that's where I think, yeah, it can be, yeah, good, going back to what you were saying earlier, like maybe quite challenging to be with the Scorpio. So yeah, what can you, yeah, what could you share on this this capacity, this desire, this ability to feel that love?
Mm. Yeah, like you beautifully mentioned, this is very well described, the tendency of Scorpio. I will die for you, I will kill for you. This is extreme Scorpio love that we need to understand that the way we perceive love is also conditioned already. So each one has different description of love or definition of love. And what helps Scorpio people is to widen the experience of love outside of just very high expectation that comes with it. Because Scorpio giving so much and being capable of giving one's whole life brings also expectation of having that intense love from the other side, or that intense merging, and you know, this loyalty. And what Scorpio gives unconsciously expects in return. And that's pretty hard for Scorpio people and for those who come to a relationship with Scorpio, because we often want to receive love in the way that we share love. And we can realize that often people love us the way they see love or they were loved. So that love giving and love expecting is very important to find some balance there. Because often, just like, you know, many fathers, they say that they love their babies because they provide them with material things, finances, space, security, and that's the way they express love. And how can you say, you know, that this father doesn't, you know, love that child? It gives, you know, all these things, but no, the child expects emotional love, taking care, saying I love you, and, you know, spending time and this and that. So we realize that we perceive love through those filters of what we were given, what we expect, what we give. So what helps a lot in finding more sources of love in relationships and in life itself is to widen that definition into finding the sources of love in more spheres of life, and seeing that not only we should expect to be loved back in the way that we do love others, and to soften that a bit more, because that intense love of Scorpio can be very poisonous, can be toxic, can be destructive, can be good at the beginning, but then in the end can be a bit difficult, knowing that Scorpio people can be over controlling. They like to give security to others, to protect them, and so on. But we know that it can become a cage, and the jealousy comes in, and so on. So widening up a bit this definition of love is what I share in practices with people, to just focus on some more keywords and find love in more expressions, just like love in expression of strength, love as innocence, love as clarity, love as pleasure, love as kindness, as abundance, as honesty, love as openness, love as spontaneity, as freedom, as joy, as impartiality, as focus, as being sober, also as being wise, love as wisdom, love as simplicity, love as beauty, love as, and so on. Realizing that those different qualities are also aspects of love that often we don't realize that we received that already. So for Scorpio persons, it's important to just realize, oh, how much love we already receive in different forms, which are described as love by others. They love us already in this way, because they act upon their definition of love. And also, if we give love, to widen it a bit more, not only to have that romantic, warrior-like, penetrating aspect of, you must feel my love because this is how I give it to you, but also to make it a bit wider and softer. That way we soften up a bit our shield, our armor, and our heart, because Scorpio has this extreme tendency to be like the samurai people. The samurai, the ancient samurai, the way they worked with their heart is very particular. As warriors, they realize that you cannot fight with an open heart. Let's put it simply in that way. So when they fight, they close their hearts, but they knew that they cannot survive with hearts closed. So in the evenings, when they would have their free time after their service, they would sit around fire and create and share poetry with one another to open the art. So they were the guardians of poetry as well back in their days. So they would talk about beautiful experiences of life and nature, and they would express poetry, and then when they go to service, they close their hearts again to be very precise and very effective in their warrior activities. So here it's if we search for balance, let's use the quality of the high ego aspect to open up the perspective a bit wider and see, oh, maybe there is already so much love going on, and maybe I can receive that and include that in my life from other aspects that I didn't include before. And maybe I can also share my love in more subtle ways, which also matters, which is also important, to hear the other person a bit more, not only project but listen. And while listening, Scorpio has to learn to listen to hear those good things also, not only those difficult, meaningful, deep things, but also those subtle, gentle, but still honest things that are often out of the radar, because Scorpio has that tendency to search for the dark, to search for the difficult, and when it's used properly, it's great, but also it can obstaculize us. Myself, I find myself as a person, when I enter any situation, project, when I meet people, I first search for the most negative. I first search for the problem. I search for the dark, because that's my radar on. First, to see what's the darkest part of it, and then all the rest is just a good surprise. So once I get to know the darkest part of it, the risk of something, the most difficult, without fear, but just with observation and curiosity, it helps me to create more safe engagement in the whole project or situation. So that can be a beneficial tool that we have. First, check out the underground, and then enjoy the upper floor.
Beautiful expression on articulation. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much. I was laughing to myself there because I was just thinking back to I've gotten a couple of new clients recently, and in the initial exploration of things, they're much younger than I usually work with, and in the initial exploration, it's just like I'm trying to find the darkness because that's what I'm like more astute with, and also what I'm dealing with a lot with most of my clients, and kind of came to the realization, hang on, there's not really any there. And then for like a minute I was just like, oh, what do I do? I was like, oh no, we can move them more into this we can just fast track them into like this more personal development direction rather than having to like work with like traumas or difficult patterns. But I made myself laugh because I was just like, I saw it with these clients. I was just like, yeah, that's the default setting to kind of like look for that, with the understanding that that's where a lot of the alchemization and a lot of the gold and a lot of the things that can really help the person lie. But yeah, with these two people, I was just like, oh, it's not there. Okay, cool. Let's go over here then. So this is quite funny. Yeah, it's a beautiful articulation. Like, wow, thank you, bud. I've got one more question for you, Tommy, and this is actually a question I asked to each guest. I'd be really keen to hear what your perspective, and that is that Fænix Vision is dedicated to creating a transformative vision of health for its listeners. So my question is, what does transformation mean to you, and what would you like to see transform in the future?
The transformation process, transformation itself, is, from my perspective, what I already mentioned a few times here in this talk, that it has to do a lot with hope. So seeing the hope, the light behind all this process and after the whole process is very important. Just like when we pray to the rising sun, we say hello to it, we give thanks for it, and we pray for always having that hope that the next day the sun will rise again, knowing that when the sun sets, we say goodbye, we enter the period of darkness with the hope that it will come again, bringing the new day. When we go to sleep, having that sense of hope that we'll wake up and continue our activities the next day. So the transformation as changing the shape of what was before, and having the vision of what it can be after it changes its shape, and giving some good space for the unknown to happen, not always insisting on the new shape, on what is after, what's the next, not insisting on our actual idea of it, but giving some space to the unknown, the surprise. So the transformation is something that our planet and humanity constantly goes through. It looks like an inevitable process of life and death, and coming again to the new shape, the new form. It looks like it's much easier when we watch it from the sense of distance and sense of humor, just like we watch a very entertaining movie, knowing that the scene will eventually change to something else, not being so identified with our bodies, with our problems, with our things that we got to identify ourselves with in the beginning. So just to observe, catching a good distance, and then if we want and we sense, we feel urge to act upon, then finding a good direction where we really want to this transformation to get into. So just like now humanity going through their processes, What I wish for humanity is more reflection, more understanding, more analyzing of the history, seeing that we already been there, we already went through all that. Things already rise and fall, and we've been going through the suffering and then saving. We've been playing this game for a long time, so maybe we can just move a bit further, find something else to play with, not to play with human lives, pain, suffering, power, and taking the resources and misusing them. We can think about the longer term, because maybe we realize that we already been doing what we are doing now for a long time and it didn't work that well. So I wish humanity a transformation that will be a meaning of operating on a higher level. And for me, that's the art. That's the purpose of art itself, that all this energy that we used for destroying things and using, misusing, abusing, we can use for the love of art, instead of finding ways to be stronger and more powerful than others, to bring others into the game and create art. If we are more selfish and more self-oriented, maybe we use that energy for more perseverance, more patience and discipline to create beautiful art ourselves, to show it to others. And maybe we don't need to create art together, but at least create something that will bring something meaningful to other people's life. So it's either all of us creating together, or having ourselves on stage and people in audience watching us playing this big scene of art in life. Because art itself, I think, is something that can save our minds if we really realize that it's just more attractive activity, and bringing art, a level of art, to everything that we do. So engineering as art, physical work as art, sports as art, harvesting and working the land, the earth, it all can be brought into the level of art. And then letting go of the art of war, as they say, because they're trying to put that quality into war itself, that has to do with taking more than we're supposed to take. Just like there is no art of depleting the earth. Taking more than we need is not really art, is misuse. Just like you put too many paints on the picture, then you cannot see the colors anymore. So we cannot go too far with our activities, respecting that we cannot destroy this earth. This is our stage. We cannot destroy people. This is our audience, and these are our artists. So finding out that we can just transform this space where we live together into something more sophisticated, more pleasant to our senses, realizing that it's so much more attractive to give good feelings to our senses visually, musically speaking. Just like the ancient cultures gave us a small example that we can build beautiful architecture and live in harmonious ways with nature. And humanity went there for a period of time, here and there, seeing that yes, the actual harmony is possible. And that's what I wish to all of us, to transform the ignorance, which I perceive the biggest enemy, into easy, experienced, pleasant creativity and self-creation instead of self-destruction. So let's transform there. That's the idea. That's the proposal.
It's powerful, man. Thank you. Maltiosh.
Mateusz, thank you for asking important questions.
It's an absolute pleasure, and just hearing your perspectives and knowledge tonight. It's just really, yeah, I've learned a lot and got me thinking in some new avenues. So, and I'm sure anyone listening has got a lot from this. So, thank you so much for your time, Tommy. Thank you for your work, your dedication, everything that you bring, and everything that you are. It's like really wow. It's a real pleasure to have spent this time, and thank you. I know it's late in Poland as well, so thank you for coming on a Sunday evening. Really appreciate it, mate. Yeah, how can last question really is how can people find out more about yourself, more about your work? There's potential of maybe coming to the UK in November sometime. We were talking about, but yeah, like, do you have any offerings or anything that you'd like to share with the audience, maybe around your music? Yeah.
Thank you for asking. Well, what I love to pass on here in this life and this world, and let's say the mask that I like to put out there the most is music itself. So if anyone is into, like this old astrologist witch said, the music of spheres, then I invite everyone to have some time listening to different world flutes and my compositions, mainly using my name Harevis. You can find a lot of music and my next albums that are in production. They are coming soon. That's the main thing that I love to share with people, music, and we can all learn how to play and use our voices and our instruments. I'm bringing soon to life something which I will call the School of Sound and Silence, where we explore both the meditative state of silence and receptiveness and sounds which we can produce through our instruments and voices. And as well, the mind cosmovision is coming soon, and the regression work. All these things probably we will come across them when we meet in this country or another. So definitely those are good things that we can touch together to help one another. And the music is something that I just like to give out there and see if it resonates with someone. And hopefully I'll be visiting UK more and more often, as it feels like there's a lot of things to exchange together. So yes, I wish you all guys a beautiful Scorpio season. Just look around, it's just so beautiful. Both the light and the shadow, they dance together, and I really do enjoy that time of life, of nature. And I hope you find in this dance of light and darkness some artistic expression that can bring you to the next level.
Mm,
Hmm.
mm, yeah, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. So, Maldios, thank you so much, brother.
Josh, thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, much love,
Hmm.
intense love for you, brother. So,
And see you soon.
very
Some.
soon. Yeah, looking forward to it, mate. Okay.
Hmm.
Peace out. Much love.
Thank you.